I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a control freak, but I do, and I have an idea. I have an idea.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time in the channel, hit subscribe right now. Well, Moira, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. As we're talking, we are almost exactly a month away of the debut album being a release, or the full-length album. Mm-hmm. Releasing your first full-length album only happens once, so you come across extremely calm and relaxed and chill, but inside is like there a raging fire of excitement going on right now.
Yes, a raging fire of excitement and anxiety, which is kind of my default setting anyway. Yeah, no, this has been a very long time coming. Very, very excited to finally be able to put this together. It's been a goal of mine for a very long time, and I had a lot to learn coming into this genre and this world from where I was previously. And, you know, it's funny, when I first thought of this idea to do a project like this in 2016, 2017, I had no idea. I thought, oh, I'm going to write this out. I have my little sheet music. I'm going to write the parts, and then I'm going to find someone. We're going to play it, and we'll have it recorded in 4 months or something. Like, ridiculous, right? I had no idea what I was in for. And so I feel very grateful that I allowed myself to be on that journey, and to also come to an awareness that it is a journey, because I am such a not a process-related person. I'm a results-driven person, and that can make me very impatient and not very receptive to things being a journey. And so if this has taught me anything, it has been that it's okay if you don't have this set timeline in your life that you're following, because I have scrapped that so many times in the last few years. And so just as a life lesson coming out of the process, that's been really big for me, you know, in all areas of my life, to be able to step back and say, no, this is part of a journey. This is part of a growth process. And if this is something you want to do, if this is a goal, then you probably need to pick up other skills along the way. You probably need to be open to a lot of things, a lot of influences, a lot of feedback, you know, a lot of failure. Yeah, so I actually feel more content, I guess. I mean, I am excited, but content is a better word, because it feels like I finally am where I need to be.
With a slight forced smile on your face, you say like, "Oh, and I got great feedback." Is another lesson for you to let go, be open to feedback, and letting others in? Is that a challenge?
That's a good question. I would say in the very, very formal classical world that I come from, you get feedback all the time. Like, it's nothing new. I mean, you're getting unsolicited feedback, and on very inappropriate things sometimes that have nothing to do with the music and more about your physical body and self on stage. It's insane the levels to which sometimes they will go. So being open to feedback itself is not something that I think was a struggle. I think it was more of a struggle of, how do I say this? I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a control freak, but I do, and I have an idea. I have an idea, right? And I want it to be this thing. And learning to let go and say, oh no, this other person has an idea on how to completely change this, and it actually makes it better, you know? And, you know, being open to say, well, you know, I really like your verses, like your poetry, but this riff makes no sense. Or why do you have this soft piano thing? Instead of me saying, oh, it needs to be that, being, you know, receptive to that. And that was a big learning process with the EP, and even going into the band format versus the recitalist or the soloist format. Because I've always, as a pianist, I've done a lot of collaborative work. And, the collaborative aspect was something I liked about being a pianist, but I was always playing other people's music.
Right.
Is there a difference when it's your own music and you're like, well, they don't even know the space I was in where these lyrics came from. And so I already have that emotional attachment. And so being able to, number one, have ownership of an artistic work that comes out into the world and to be proud of it, but also to say, no, I'm going to let go and let a bunch of other people do what they will with it, right? And then beyond that, let people have their own reactions to it and interpretations, which may not even be the original intent,
Yeah. Quite likely even. I mean, I'm sure that 80% of reactions of people on your music are like, oh, this resonated with me, or I related with that because of XYZ. You go like, actually, it was ABC. It wasn't XYZ, but cool, this is just, that's part of it. That's part of it.
Yeah, totally.
You talked about, like, in the classical world, there's so many, like, expectations, or there's, like, how people want you to look, and there's all these things that are almost out of your control. In the world of metal, we're not, unfortunately, completely free of that as well. And when you mention, like, oh, I am a classical trained musician and singer, and depending on which, let's say, 15 seconds of a song people that first discover you listen to, a lot of people are going to automatically put you in a certain box, right? It's, oh, there's a female fronting this band, she can sing opera, and there's some Gothic elements to it. Okay, we have another Nightwish person, right? And what you guys, you are not, let's go, you're not your grandmother's symphonic metal band. In fact, you come from a very different angle that goes well beyond metal and classical music. So for people that are newer to your music, that are discovering you through this interview, talk a little bit about how you've allowed so many different musical worlds into your music and why that was important to you.
Sure. And also I really appreciate what you said, because that has been a little bit of a, I wouldn't say struggle, but an interesting opportunity recently in terms of talking with people and in terms of branding a project. Because when we did start out with the EP, it was very much in the vein of, Nightwish was one of the first things I heard that got me into metal. And then I went way down a rabbit hole and a whole other different journey. But that's where I started, right? Because I thought, oh, it's really cool. They met in school. She's got this training, blah, 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 right? And I think that was also part of that learning process of feedback is, I wrote this little thing and the piano part sounded like Nightwish. I was like, no, right? It need to move beyond that, at least for myself. So when we sat down to write new music after the EP, we all come from very different backgrounds and have performed a lot of different genres just as part of our lives. And when we pieced together what we all like to listen to, what our influences were, it ended up creating this hodgepodge. And we decided, well, let's do the song based on what the feel is. And I would tell them, it's like, this poem is about this. This poem is about insomnia and anxiety. Or, this song is about, the grief of a person that you literally can't get out of your bloodstream, that sort of thing. And let's go from there. What do you hear? Right? Oh, the riff should sound like this. Oh, cool, it's doomy. Let's do that. Oh, yeah, I've been listening to Emma Ruth Rundle and Thou. I love that album, by the way, the one they dropped a few years ago. And I remember sending that to Luca, our guitarist at the time, and I said, this is just, there's so much here, and I resonate with it. And he really liked it too, and it made sense for our song Blood. So that's how we, it wasn't that we were trying to emulate it. It was more what really got under our skin and what we loved. And over time, we realized it wasn't symphonic metal at all, right?
Exactly.
And so, choosing to sing classically at times and then also having orchestration underneath does bring in a bit of the symphonic element. But I wanted specifically, and I won't talk too much in detail about it here, but I was taking orchestration and arranging lessons from Francesco Farini from Flesh God Apocalypse. awesome dude. I've learned so much in the couple of years I've taken these lessons.
Right.
And it was cool because we would go through the songs and let me write with my own voice, and we discovered it's like, oh, I love these old like noir movie soundtracks. I love Mahler, I love Richard Strauss, I love these thick harmonies, right? Not like light catchy melodies. And so we were able to, yes, orchestrate it, but when you take the instruments away, it's actually these weird clashing chord clusters that resolve, or something sitting in a sixth the whole time and not, you know, things like that, to create a palette that seemed to be authentic to me, but still honor those roots, but also move into whatever this genre is that we're trying to call it. Mystic prog, progressive doom, doom opera, doom prog, whatever it is, basically this spirit, right? Or as Hillbilly Gothic.
Are there specific elements that you dabbled in on this album that you go like, I really like that, and if I already think about next album, there's gonna be more of that specific thing?
Yes, actually. And we're already writing, Matt and I we're dabbling in a handful of songs where I have sketches for them, and we've been writing them, and I do see elements of Eve, Lilith, and Blood really continuing on.
Okay.
Because those elements are there of jazz, a little bit of, you know, cinematic movie scores.
Yeah.
Really like heavier, doomier riffs or mathy like sections in terms of time signatures. And also using a lot of that kind of other element, hand drums, things like that. Because A Wayfaring Stranger is an example on the album. I always try to include something that's Appalachian in a recording. And so that was the song I chose for this album, but also the idea that Persian hand drums kind of have a sister in the Bayron and the other like Celtic frame drums. And so using that in Lilith and in some other pieces on the album every once in a while in a surprising way, instead of having a full drum kit. I really like the what's the word I'm thinking of? When the two things are against each other, playing against each other.
Contradiction or idiosyncrasy, to use a nice fancy word. But
exactly. Yeah, this contradiction where you'll have something like you'll have Blood, and you'll have this really heavy like double bass kick at the end, right, and you're like hitting like the crash and the cymbal and all this stuff like in the song, and then the next one is frame drums, hand drums. You know, and that because you're creating this soundscape with those different sounds. And I said, yes, you know, putting those into these elements. And I would also say a lot of the vocal style that comes from those songs is also really informed. I do a lot of side work. I've been doing a lot of work on Hildegard. It was a 12th century nun, composer, mystic, doctor, physician, botanist, illustrator. She did all the things, and she was really awesome. And I do some light research on her, and I have another separate project in my other life that revolves around her. And those vocal melodies that she wrote were so haunting and unusual for chant that it started filtering in to writing these vocal lines. And so I really want to be able to mix that ethereal cinematic Hildegard with the heavier, more groove might be the right word in terms of rhythm, you know. And if Matt was here, he'd might correct me on this, but you know, because that's all him, like all of that's all him. Like he's very much into, like, he got me into Sleep Token. I'm obsessed with Sleep Token now, but you know, he listens to a lot of, oh my god, like Spirit Box, Tesseract, you know, that sort of thing, and doing something that's a little more groovy, heavy, unexpected. Is definitely that direction. But those are that little core bit of songs are my favorite. And we are trying to keep that spirit, you know, going with the next pieces that we're writing.
Now, as you talked briefly about Hildegard and all the different things that she was doing, just to kind of draw the parallel to yourself, you know, being being one of the key members of an indie band means that you have to wear many hats as well, going from figuring out which you're clearly very not only passionate but very comfortable about, all the intricacies of the music and the science of the music, to stuff like, well, I'm also the model for the merch, and anything in between.
Yeah.
If you forget about composing and singing, all the things that come with running an indie band, is there one of those hats that fits you better than others that you've, and was that maybe a surprise to figure out as well?
Oh my gosh. I would say all the auxiliary work that goes into being a musician in this era that we're in,
right,
also has a lot to do with why even releasing a full-length album is a big deal. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much work goes into it and how many thousands of dollars go into it. People are like, oh, you just got to go get signed, you just got to do this. I said, no, it's a process. I have to, like you said, I design the website, I do all the social media, I do all the copywriting, I do all the graphic design and the collateral design, I do the photos for the merch, I do all this stuff, wrangling people together, running spreadsheets, being project manager, like all of these things that have to be done. I would say, now I'm actually a very big introvert, and having been a stage performer for so long, I can put it on and I can be out there for people and be outgoing and network and stuff. But at
energy.
At myself, I would like to have my journal and go into the woods and write lyrics, which is what I do. Being able to do that instead.
Right.
But I have to say, I do have experience, and I've worked as a web designer. And so that was the piece where it was really cool to be able to use my professional experience, but then also my actual passion about that project.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time and love on that stuff, right? And I know it's not even super important in terms of the whole package when you're trying to present yourself as an indie band, but I wanted every single thing to be intentional. And so I think the design and the overall design is something that I've really fallen into loving doing, down to, when I commission an illustrator and I get all these elements from him and I'm like, well, this represents this represents this song. I'm very intentionally placing everything. Nothing is there's probably, everyone makes mistakes, but nothing was ever just thrown there. And being able to own that process as an indie musician is kind of cool, because you don't have someone else coming to you and saying, well, no, our market research says blah, 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 do this. And I said, well, I've done my own market research, but I also know this is who I am.
Classical music tends to start with an overture that gives you almost like a buffet of everything that's to come. And with you guys kind of turned upside down with Slice of Time, the epic sort of closer of the album, where to me, when I was listening to it, it kind of really felt like there were so many different things laid out for me throughout the album, and they all kind of come together or culminate in this one epic song. Is that a way to interpret it at all, or am I completely off?
That's fascinating. I didn't even think about it like that. That's awesome. Slice of Time was a piece that we began working on first when we decided to finish up new material after the EP. And I put it there for a poetic reason in terms of the life cycle, the psychic cycle that the individual is going through in the album, because that song is actually about anxiety and insomnia.
Okay.
And the total frantic way that if you have a brain that doesn't shut up, it never shuts up. Right. And, and that means if it doesn't shut up, it's reliving pain. It's reliving awful things. And then the chorus is the moment of hope, saying that, I will get through this. I have gotten through this. And so it's a triumphant kind of into this journey to have that self-realization. And also it's kind of great to end something with a banger. But but it's really neat that you mentioned that, because, it was a fun writing process too, because that was one that I actually went to the guys with a very clear symphonic idea of what I wanted in the orchestra. Because sometimes I write the orchestra based on the guitar riffs, but this one I was like, it's da 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 da. It needs to be this. This is the, you know, and this is the melody. The da 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 da. Like I knew that already, that had to be in there. And as we were in the group, like writing things, it evolved. We're like, oh, let's take it down a half step, and then, oh, this is like really groovy. Let's do this, you know. And this is our way of exploring all those different parts of, you know, going in and out of sleep, right? And having the anxiety dreams and nightmares and things like that, taking you through all those different parts. And when we finished it, we thought, oh, it was that moment of we really, really like kind of going in this direction, right? Where we have this like genty breakdown, or we have this lush orchestral section. And we thought, man, we love playing it live. This feels representative. And so it really was a springboard, I think, in a lot of ways to get to the more mature finished drafts of the other songs.
Moira, I think you and I could go on for hours talking about music and your music and everything that comes around it, and expectations in the scene and why they all suck. But but I want to say thank you for taking the time. I had a fun time talking to you. And I will keep my fingers crossed to see shows announced all over, and hopefully including up here in Canada. And get to see you guys on a stage in 2023. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best with the release of this album.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it, and subscribe to the channel.